Hi, I'm Ashley Douglas, and I want to talk about something that drives me absolutely crazy in the business consulting world. Here's the deal. Business owners come to me all the time saying they need to, quote unquote, get more organized. And I have to stop them right in that sentence because get more organized is precisely why they're stuck. What they actually need isn't organization, it's systems architecture. And there's a critical difference between those two things. It's one that determines whether you're just rearranging problems or actually solving the problem. And so I really want to address this today. Here's the way I think about it. You wouldn't hire a general contractor to come, quote unquote, organize your kitchen. You'd hire an architect to design flow, functionality, integration into your kitchen space. So, to think about how the kitchen connects to the dining room, how the pantry relates to the cooking space, how traffic patterns work when multiple people are using the space. I'm not saying that a GC couldn't envision these things as well, but typically they're the ones who are going to get the job done, not necessarily the ones who are going to envision the lifestyle of the space. And that's also what's happening in business systems. They work exactly the same way, but most people are approaching them like they're organizing a junk drawer instead of designing infrastructure into their business. And so today I'm just going to explain what systems architecture actually means, why it's fundamentally different from quote unquote getting organized, and why this distinction matters for your business growth. So let's get into it. Let's start by defining what most people mean when they say they need to get organized. When I hear it, they're usually meaning that they need to clean up the mess. They need to create folders on their computer or in their office spaces. They want to color code their spreadsheets. They want to buy a new project management system tool. They're implementing a morning routine. Yes, I'm serious. Morning routines are important. I understand that, you guys, but it's also probably not going to fix your business. And most commonly, they want to start using a calendar consistently. And all of these things feel really productive. They create the illusion of progress. But the problem is that kind of organization, it's cosmetic. It's like rearranging the chaos into prettier chaos. So let me give you a more concrete example of the quote unquote right way to do things. A client came to me the other day and they were like telling me how their team was disorganized. They felt as though the files were scattered everywhere, nobody could find anything, communication was just a mess, and so they invested in a new project management tool. That sounds very logical, right? Until they took the extra step and they created elaborate folder structures. And then they held a training session on how we're going to stay organized from now on. But 3 months later, the same chaos kept happening, but just in the form of a different tool. That's because they organized the outputs of a broken system instead of focusing on redesigning the system itself. Organization asks, how do we store this information better? But my form of systems architecture asks, why are we creating this information in the first place? Who needs to access it? When do they need it? How does it flow through the business? And what's the difference? Do you see what I'm saying? One is reactive and one is strategic. And so systems architecture is the design of interconnected operational infrastructure that enables businesses to function and execute reliably. They are able to scale efficiently and they can evolve without breaking. And I know that that was a lot of, jargon. So let me break it down into language that doesn't sound like a textbook. What I'm really trying to say is that systems architecture means that we understand how information tasks, decisions, deliverables, how these things flow through your business. We can identify dependencies. That's like what needs to happen before something else can happen. And from there, we can also design decision points. That's like, where does this approval happen? Who has authority to make the decision? What are the criteria of finalizing a decision? And we can even build in feedback loops. And a feedback loop is basically feedback, comments, a survey that helps you understand how you know if something is working or if it's broken. You can even think of something as simple as a customer service survey. That feedback that loops back to your email inbox, for example, tells you if you are doing well, if your customer service strategy is working, or if it's broken. And then, for a roundup of examples, we could also even create integration points that would tell you how different systems talk to each other. For example, with that customer service survey, how would you use the information of a positive or negative customer service survey to then iterate on your post-delivery process or your offboarding of a client? If that sounds like project management to you, you're pretty much catching on. Systems architecture is strategic project management, and you can apply it to your entire business instead of just one initiative. So here's what that would look like in practice. Instead of saying we need to organize our client files better, as my client did in the first example, systems architecture would ask, what is the complete life cycle of client data within our business? When does it enter our system? Who touches it? How does it flow from sales to onboarding, through delivery to offboarding? And what decisions are we making using this data? What breaks when the data is incomplete or even inaccurate? And so instead of saying we need better communication, systems architecture would also ask what types of communication already exist in our business, and then which types of communication require immediate response versus documentation versus collaboration. Who needs access to what information to make decisions? That should be a recurring question within some of these ideation sessions or your strategic thoughts as the founder and owner of the business. And then finally, how do you route urgent issues without creating constant interruptions to the business? I hope that you can see how this is fundamentally different from just organizing. Organizing accepts that the current state is already correct, and then it just makes it look neater. But architecture would redesign your current state so that it can actually function better. And so this distinction matters for your business's growth because organized chaos might work when you're small, not just small business, as in, the United States definition of a small business, but also when you want to scale past a certain profitability. And it absolutely breaks when you are trying to walk that path. That's why you need better systems as your company grows. So when you're a solo founder, or even a team of 2, a team of 3, you can get away with disorganized systems because tribal knowledge will fill in the gaps for you. You remember your client's preferences. You know that this process has a workaround, and you and your teammates can pivot quickly when something is breaking or has broken because everyone's already in the same room or potentially the same text message group chat. But this is where I'm concerned for your business. The moment you try to grow by hiring more people, taking on more clients, expanding your service offerings, that tribal knowledge model will collapse. it's nearly guaranteed because your new team members aren't going to know the workarounds unless you teach them. And if you listen to episode 1 of the Flowstate private series, you'll already know what kind of time you are spending on answering already answered questions. Your clients could start falling through the cracks because nobody documented a handoff process. You could spend more time explaining how we do things than actually doing the things that generate revenue. And this is why so many businesses plateau at $500,000 or even $1 million when you have so much more potential within you as a founder and within the powerful business and the valuable business that you've created. And that's not because the market disappeared. It's not because you lost your capabilities. Far from it. It's really just because operational infrastructure literally can't support additional volume. And so organized chaos, it scales linearly at best, but systems architecture can scale exponentially. And I have a feeling that if you're listening to this podcast, that's the kind of founder you are. And so this is why I don't call what I do business consulting in the traditional sense, because most business consulting is advice-based. They're like, here's what you should do differently. Instead, what I do, it's really architecture-based. And I like to say, for example, here's the infrastructure design that will enable what you want to do within your business. And so when you position yourself as an architect instead of a consultant, like I have, something really interesting happens. My clients and connections have stopped seeing this as optional improvement, and instead they see it as essential infrastructure, which is what it is. Nobody says maybe later to an architect when their building has structural problems. Nobody sees architecture as like a nice to have when they're trying to build something that needs to hold weight. And so the same's true for business systems. When you reframe operational systems as architecture, it will shift from we should probably get more organized someday into we need structural redesign if we want to grow this business and support our goals. So that's fundamentally a different conversation. And it's the conversation that actually needs to happen if you are going to transform your business into something that is larger than what you may have originally dreamed, instead of just incrementally tidying up some folders. And so to close out, you guys, here's what I want you to take away from all of this. If you have been telling yourself that you need to, quote unquote, get more organized, I want you to start asking yourself different questions. Instead of saying to yourself, how can I make this neater? Ask, how should this actually work? It's a fundamentally different question, and it starts to generate completely different ideas and solutions in your mind. So instead of asking something like, where should I store this information? Ask, how does this information need to flow through my business? Here's another swap out. Instead of asking yourself, what tool should I use for this transaction? You could try asking yourself, what process am I trying to enable within my business? And just the simple swap of these foundational thought frameworks are going to help your business scale, because the businesses that scale aren't the ones with the prettiest folders. They're the ones with the strongest architecture. And so if you recognize your business in this episode, if you've been organizing instead of architecting, just know that this is exactly why you're stuck. It's not because you're failing. You are absolutely not a failure. You are furthest from a failure. I'm actually so incredibly proud of you and impressed by you for building a business in the beautiful United States of America, because that is a hard thing to do. And many, many people have not made it and felt as though they could not make it to where you are already. You have done fantastic. All of this pain that you're feeling is actually because you're solving the wrong problem. And systems architecture will help you. It's not about working harder or even being more disciplined. You are one of the hardest workers in our beautiful country. You have been more disciplined than majority of your friends and neighbors. All that this is about is redesigning operational infrastructure so that the damn thing actually works. I'm Ashley Douglas, and this has been episode 2 of the Flowstate Private Series, where we're going to reframe business operations as the actual thing it is: architecture that supports your growth or limits it. Thanks for listening.